Welcome to Leaving Six Figure Stories, where we interview amazing people that leave careers, police, being teachers, and then they go off and create incredible companies, become super entrepreneurial. And there's nothing better than the story today, especially because it's one of my law enforcement family members. I haven't really interviewed anyone that was a police officer or a state trooper like me. And I'm excited today to interview our guest today. And the cool thing, you think about leaving six figures. This guy went from leaving his six-figure career, and now he's making $80,000 a month and climbing. So I don't know about you. That's a story I want to hear. How the heck did this guy go from leaving his police job to now making 80,000 plus a month, which is, I think you do the math, close to $1 million. And from the look of it, he's going to be well over $1 million. Because now he has all his time back to actually do the amazing things that he's already been doing. So, Garrett, welcome to the call.
Excellent, John. Thank you so much for having me, and super excited to be here. And before we even get started, I have to say thank you for everything you've done, the book you wrote, the conversations we've had, and I guess we can dive in and talk about how that's helped me.
Awesome. I'll send the money through PayPal when we get
Perfect.
done.
Thank you. Sounds like a plug, but it's true. It's true.
Yeah, it's funny because this podcast is really about these stories. And when we have a mutual friend in Roberto, and when he shared this, I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh man, I can help this guy. And like, I think I could figure it out. Like I could tell him, but the true story is that it's a plan. It's a cycle that you have to go through yourself. It's nothing about anyone else but you.
That's right.
And you kind of know like what's right and wrong, but we'll get into that. So just tell them a little bit about yourself, just so they know who you are, how you got here, and all that good stuff.
Sure. So again, my name's Garret Wing. I am 40 years old. I live in South Florida. I have my wife, Stephanie, my two young kids, Ari and Alora, who are 4 and 6, my daughters. And we are the owners of two really good businesses, American Standard Dog Training, where we do high-end VIP premium board and train programs. We bring dogs into our home. We train them for approximately 6 weeks at a time, bring them back to their loving family where they live the rest of their life, well-behaved dogs. And we also started just a year ago a company called DIYcanine.com, and it is a business where folks who maybe can't afford our premium level dog training, but from anywhere in the world can access our online courses to see exactly how we train dogs at such a high level. And that's why we call it DIY, so that they can train their dogs in a do-it-yourself program. And that's been wildly successful also. And so that's what we do here. We train dogs all day, every day. We're just dog people.
All right. So we're going to get into that. So let's start before that.
Sure.
And I listened to your video on your website, which was cool. I seen the picture of I think it was your dad.
Yeah.
So your dad was a K-9 police officer, the same force that what PD were you with?
The City of Miami Police Department.
Woo!
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, you're in it then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And your dad was there too in Miami?
Yeah. So then that's the story, I guess. And that's kind of where the journey starts. He got hired in 1980 with the City of Miami Police Department. And by 1981 was already in the K-9 unit. And I was born in 1983. So my story, as far as it relates to dogs and police canine work, is I literally grew up surrounded by these police dogs. They were just part of our family. And so from day one, like I literally was riding on their backs as a little infant, they were part of our family. It was like my brother growing up, always having a police canine dog in the house. And then I grew up on the stories of my father being a police canine handler, listening to those stories. He'd come home and that's what we talk about over dinner, like the chase he had and the things that would happen. And then he obviously met my mom before I was born. She was a stewardess for an airline, a major airline, but he convinced her to leave that job and become a police officer. Then we can fast track later. They end up getting a divorce when I'm around 12, but my father remarries Jennifer Wing, who becomes my stepmother. She's also a police officer with the City of Miami. Then my mother remarries a lieutenant who worked for the City of Miami Police Department. So at some point, all four of my parents, right, my mother, father, stepmother, and stepfather, were all City of Miami police officers. And so what else would I do when I turn 20 years old other than follow in their footsteps and also become a police officer? And of course, and this is where it gets wild, and we're fast tracking here, but as soon as the opportunity presented itself for me to apply for the K-9 unit, which was 2 years on, we had a minimum of 2 at the time, I applied, got accepted, and it was myself, my stepmother Jennifer, and my father Gordon. All three of us were police canine handlers in the same unit for the same agency. I don't think that's ever happened prior to or since, and it probably will never happen again. It's just kind of a weird anomaly that happened there. And so at one point, all three of us were in the same unit doing the same thing, and it was like a family business, if you will, even back then.
Were you ever on the same jobs together?
100%, yeah. Like,
Wow.
yeah, and it was weird because this would happen often, and not for nothing, not to toot our own horns or anything, but we had a reputation for being go-getters. My father, to the very last day he was on the force, he did 32 years. He was out there just shaking the bushes, trying to get in that one last chase, that one last perimeter, that one last, dog bite. And so when you put all three of us out there hunting, if you will, for the bad guys, and trying to do what's right. And the city of Miami is no joke, right? It's got a lot of crime. Our arrest forms were ridiculous. It was Officer Garret Wing observed the armed robbery vehicle positioned in an alleyway. He set up surveillance. He called in for assistance. Officer Jennifer Wing took up another position. The vehicle gets occupied. Officer Garret Wing starts chasing it. He loses it. Jennifer Wing picks it up. Jennifer Wing pits the vehicle, and Officer Gordon Wing with his police canine dog comes in and bites the suspect. And the state attorneys would read this and say, we can't go to trial on this. This is ridiculous. And it's like, but it's the truth. What do you want us to do? Lie? We're police officers. We just happen to work the same shift at times. And we just happen to, who better to be your backup than your old man, or who better to be your backup than your son? And so we would get into some, just doing police work. It just so happened we had the same last name,
That is the craziest thing I've heard. I mean, I've been around a little bit too, and I've never heard that. I mean, you're like LeBron and Bronny, like, dad's there, everybody's
Yeah.
involved. I mean, that's so cool. And I don't want to get you in trouble, but I know there's stories. So you could, are there any stories that between all the three of you or your dad, or any stories that resonate to you that you still think about today?
Oh God, there's countless. Like I said, we were always
You
just.
had to pick one for
Yeah,
the
sure.
audience.
So this is a juicy one because it's kind of funny, exciting, scary, sad, all rolled into one. And it's a long one, but I'll try to condense it down. But my father was working more of like a modified afternoon shift. So he would get started around, let's say, 12 p.m. Why I didn't get in till 1, but I was like a go-getter cop. I was living in downtown Miami as my first apartment by myself. I probably got 5 years on. And as I'm getting ready, I would actually turn the radio on to kind of listen to what was happening before I got in. Don't ask me why I would do that. Like, I wouldn't do that at this day. I couldn't get far enough away from it. But at the time, I couldn't get enough of it. So I'd be getting ready for work. And I heard my father get on the radio and say that he's behind an occupied stolen vehicle that's pulling into a gas station. Again, my father at this point probably has 20, 25 years on. And so he keeps it calm, cool, collected. And he's like, hey, the guy's pulling in the gas station. I think he's just trying to see if I'm following him or not. So I'm going to stay back, but start sending units my way. Well, what ends up happening is these, gung-ho rookies come flying into the gas station and stirring it all up. The guy gets spooked. He starts taking off. As he takes off out of the gas station, he ends up hitting 2 police cars. Well, now the chase is on, baby. So we're chasing them. And I say I'm not in yet. I'm getting ready as fast as I can. And I hear the chase going on, and I can hear the streets being called out. This guy's got to be doing 120 miles an hour down residential streets. They lose him. They're like, this guy, we can't keep up with him. He's gone. He's driving like a Ram 1500 pickup with a topper. So he's lost. But they end up putting the bolo out city or county-wide saying, hey, we got a bad dude here. He's in a stolen car and he just rammed 2 police officers. Want to keep an eye out. So I end up going to the station, regular roll call, and it's just kind of a regular day. And we end up putting that bolo out again for the roll call for the next shift that's coming in. Be on the lookout for this guy. And so what ends up happening is not like 30 minutes after roll call breaks, a different channel gets on in Coconut Grove, for those who know Miami, a unit gets on and says, hey, that vehicle that everybody was looking for? Well, I got a guy just flagged me down, and he says that he came home in a cul-de-sac, a very ritzy neighborhood, and this guy was robbing his house, burglarized his house, and it ends up the guy burglarized every home in that cul-de-sac and got into that same white vehicle and fled. So now everyone's like, man, and this is fresh off the press. So this guy's around. So that same officer says, hey, I've spotted the guy. He's backed in a parking lot, but the car's, he's not in the car. He's just, the car's here. He must be in the park. So he's looking around and he's trying to give the tag, and it ends up the guy wasn't there, but he was ducked down. And so what happens is he's like, oh my God, he is in the car. And the car takes off again. Second chase of the day. So we start chasing it again. I say the whole city's coming in to get this guy. And there's not much going on that day, but this was the exciting thing happening. They end up chasing him, but this guy once again is going over 100 miles an hour, but this time traveling northbound in the southbound lanes of like a 6-lane highway, like 3 north, 3 south, a pretty major thoroughfare.
Like 95, or where was he at?
No, so this is actually 27th Avenue in Miami, which becomes University Drive, like in Broward. So it's like a major thoroughfare.
Yeah.
And like a decent amount of traffic out. And I should say that, just for reference, not that anybody was thinking of it at this time, but it happens to be Mother's Day. Mother's Day, it's probably been about 12 or 14 years since this story happened, give or take. And so the lieutenant overseeing the situation says, hey, man, this guy's going over 100 miles an hour the wrong way. Like, this is not worth it, boys and girls. We need to call this chase off. It doesn't really fit our pursuit criteria. The guy's only burglarized some homes. It's not worth it, anybody getting killed. So everybody backs off. But even if you back off, you can still see the guy from blocks and blocks out. And so they're still giving a few more calls on the radio, like, hey, we're not pursuing the car, but just want to let you know, I last saw him make a left on such and such street. And so I'm coming from another channel. I'm not even supposed to be in this area, but I hear me and my father, I think we're actually on the phone. Oh, are you listening to Channel 7? That's your guy, the guy that ran from you. Let's go head down that way. So we're hauling ass in that direction. And we're like hearing the call, like, oh, they called it off, but hey, we're still going to come into the area in case this guy pops up again. And sure enough, after a minute or two of no one's making any radio calls about this guy's direction of travel, a unit gets on, panicky. Oh my God, send me everyone, send me the world. We have a major traffic crash involving this same white truck. It's T-boned a minivan. It sent the minivan about 100 yards down an intersection. It's spun. The driver has been ejected. That driver hits a telephone pole, is dead on scene. It's kind of sad and tragic. There's a person trapped in the minivan. A young girl is trapped in the minivan that's been crushed. The suspect's vehicle has been deflected into a home. It hit a palm tree. The palm tree hit an electrical wire. The electrical wire hit the house. The house is now on fire. It's an electrical fire, so it's blazing up really quickly. And oh my God, people are trapped inside the house and they can't get out. And I'm like, holy moly. So we're still heading down this way. Now we're really getting it. And it's panic and pandemonium on the radio, trying to get the people out of the house, trying to get this girl out of the car, trying to, deal with the person that's been ejected. And of course, the suspect is on the run again. He's on foot now. Nobody knows where he went. And so I hear the radio calls.
And you have a fatality too, right? Now you have fatality. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so everything just, got real serious real quick. While we're making it there, the officer gets on the radio again and says, hey, those officers coming down the street, which is us, tell them to turn around right now. There's a purple Toyota Tercel that just passed them. The husband is saying that that's his vehicle, but that's not his wife driving it. What the guy did is he broke in through the back door, armed himself with a knife, held an elderly lady up at knife point, robbed her of her jewelry, and took her keys to her car, and is now fleeing once again. Now the chase is on. So now it's me and my father, and only me and my father in this chase, because everybody else is tied up, and we are dead set. This guy is not getting away this time. So it's the third pursuit of the day in less than like 2 or 3 hours with this guy. And he's not getting away this time. He picked the wrong car, by the way, a Toyota Tercel, like, little 4-cylinder, whatever. He's not getting away. I have already made a commitment to myself. If I have to ram him off the road, I don't care what it takes. This guy's not getting away. So me and my father are chasing it. I keep paralleling him because the guy keeps going east and south. So I'm just staying 1 block south with hopes that I can catch him in an intersection and give him a little love back. And it ends up every time I come up to the intersection, they're just turning right in front of me. So I'm in the chase. My father's right on this guy's ass. And long story short, he ends up losing him. No way. My dad turns a corner. He sees the guy make a left. My father makes the left, and the guy's not there. Where did he go? And so my father's smart. He goes, there's no way this guy got to the end of the block and turned. He must have ducked in somewhere. And so he slows down and he's looking. There's the guy. He's pulled into someone's driveway and ducked down. My dad comes in and basically pins him from the back. At that point, I'm arriving because he's like, Garrett, he's at this address. I fly around the block. I come in, and it's me and my dad and his canine dog. And this guy comes out of the car with the knife in hand. My dad sends the dog on him, and we'll just fast track and say, that's all she wrote. He didn't make it out of that one. And the story goes on and on, but that's We ended up catching him, and we got to the hospital, and this guy's got a dog bite, a little bit of injury from the crash. And the nurses are looking at us like, man, why'd you bring this guy to us? Well, did you have to bite him? You know, I can't believe you're putting this on our plate. And then this guy's being a tremendous pain in the butt, screaming to the nurses, I need pain meds and this and that. And they're giving us a hard time. And I said, look, you know, Miss Nurse, I know you're upset with us. I know it seems kind of bad that the guy got bit. By the way, he got bit in the neck with the dog. Pretty serious. But you see that young lady over there who's on life support? He is the one that T-boned her mom's car, killed her mom, and she's now in bad shape. And she goes, oh, that changes everything. And that's when I learned that nurses are more evil than police officers. Let me tell you, they
Wow.
anyway. So, but
Well,
it's
I tell you, I felt like I was there in the story, you know, and I tell you, I mean, that thing had so many parallels. I mean,
yeah.
so you've been around dogs, you've been around that for so long. So when did you start to convert the police job into like a business?
Sure. So it started with we started American Overwatch Canine Services, which was our law enforcement consulting for police work. We were just so passionate about it and pretty good at it that we would travel around the country, put on seminars, and help other police canine handlers and their dogs be better at their job. Still do that to this day. We love that, but it's not a lot of money in it. You know, a lot of police agencies are pretty cheap, and there's a lot of travel involved. And at the time, I'm still a full-time police officer, so I could only do this a few times a year. But word basically started getting out like, well, if you're doing this police canine training, can you train my poodle? And I'm like, you know, other police officers would reach out because that's our community. Garrett, I know you do this high speed stuff, but man, my Jack Russell Terriers just give me a hard time. Can you throw me a few pointers? And I kept telling them like, no, I no offense, but I don't want to water down my high speed police canine training business training your poodle. Once they find out I'm training your poodle, they're not going to want me to train with the Navy SEALs, you know? And so I put that off for like a couple years. But then what ends up happening is kind of like a very pivotal moment in my life, in our life, my wife and I, where I'm looking at the bank statement and I'm looking at the mortgage payment coming up. And by the way, at this point, I'm a police lieutenant. You know, fast forward, I'm making about $120,000 a year, a little more with overtime, and I should be sitting pretty. And we don't live beyond our means. I live in a modest home in a nice neighborhood, and we have two fairly new cars, nothing fancy, right? And I have two young kids. At this point, my second kid was just born. She's only a few months old. And you know, it's just expensive, right? Having kids. And for the first time, I'm looking at it going, hey, Stephanie, my wife, we're not going to make next month's mortgage. I don't know how we got here, but this sucks. Like, what are we going to do? And I'm very resourceful. And luckily for us as police officers, we can pick up extra jobs and we can do that hustle. It's what my father did growing up. You know, when I was growing up, he worked probably 60, 80 hours a week, you know, 40 hours at work and picking up another 20, 34 hours, 40 hours of extra duty work, you know, doing security work and stuff like that. And so I had this discussion with my wife, something needs to change here. And here are our options. I've already thought about it before I even presented it to her. I can either do what my father did when we were growing up, and my kids will never see us, you know, and I'll bring in that extra money and we'll make that mortgage payment no problem. And we're going to have to keep doing that. Or, God, isn't there something else that I can pour my energy into, you know? And it occurred to me that, you know, I had a couple of like hobbies going on, if you will. And one of them being, I just love training dogs. I said, you know, maybe I stopped turning these clients away. And long story short, I took my first client for $50 an hour. You know, I'm like, well, how much would I make at an off duty? $50 an hour? Okay, I'll do this for $50 an hour. You know, so rather than be away from home, you know, doing more of what I already do enough of already, let me spend time training dogs. And that customer, my very first customer, was ecstatic and wanted more and wanted more and wanted more. And then I just started refining the process. And I said, man, you know, rather than me traveling all the way down to train, and, you know, it's an hour of travel, hour of training, an hour back, I'm investing 3 hours for 1 hour of pay. I'm like, this isn't going to make sense. What if I started doing boarding and training, and I'll get more training done? So I took on my first client. I think my first client, I only charged like $500 for that, however many weeks it was. And when it was all said and done, the client was super happy. Dog was badass. And I enjoyed the process, really enjoyed it. But I like did the math. I'm like, even though I had more $500 more in my pocket, I'm like, I think I was making about $2 an hour if you add everything up, all the work I put in. And so again, long story short, every single dog I took on after that, I inevitably ended up doubling my rate and doubling my rate and doubling my rate, because it just felt right. Like I have to get compensated for the amount of work I'm putting in. And then it just spread like wildfire. Just never have we ever had to advertise. It's always been word of mouth. our business has just absolutely flourished from word of mouth. Because now I trained, Frank's dog. Well, Frank has friends and family. They all have dogs. And so I'm training all of their dogs. And so it's just been like a roaring success ever since then, nonstop booking several months out, training people's dogs.
Now, is your wife involved in that business?
Yeah, so she, handles more of the behind the scenes stuff. She helps with scheduling. I suck at scheduling. I know my strengths and weaknesses. It's just, the calendar is not my friend. She handles the accounting because that's her background. And just generally, especially when we first started, we had no employees. She was the dog mom. She was the one helping take them out, make sure they were fed, watered, well cared for. And I'm handling the business aspect. And then I'd finish training this dog and I come in and she's cuddling on the couch with a client's dog, which is what we do. That's what we do. And it's like, we'll watch a movie with that dog, put that pup up, bring the other one out while we eat dinner. And that was it, just rotating it out. So yeah, she's very involved from the beginning.
Now, did you have to upgrade your home and all that for this, or did you
Yeah.
move?
Yeah, so it started with our very first home, which was like a 1,750 square foot home in an HOA community,
Uh,
a 3, 2.5. But it was just the perfect layout because there was this common area next to us, which kind of made it almost like a half-acre home. But even though it was a common area, we were allowed to use it. And all my neighbors loved me because we trained all the neighbors' dogs too. Even the HOA president turned a blind eye to what we were doing because he's like, I love what you're doing. And I'm waving at all the neighbors because every time they drive by, I'm out there with some random dog that's healing and doing some cool stuff. And so we never had issues there, but we were really outgrew that facility, which was our home. And we had converted the entire house basically into like a working kennel, but we kept things small. We've always been quality over quantity. So we never tried to take on more, especially back then, more than 2 dogs at a time. At some
yeah.
point we kind of, stretched to about 4 dogs at a time, but that was max, and, so then, yes, fast forward, we ended up having to move and we moved to a much bigger home on 1 acre where we can take on even more dogs, and that's been kind of the next journey. But here we are, not almost 2 years into this home. We've outgrown this home, and now we're looking at something 5, 10 acres or more with a second structure. So that's kind of getting ahead of myself here. But yes, we have plans to expand as we speak. We are looking at our next property.
So the podcast is called Leaving Six Figure Stories. So
Yes.
eventually, this side hustle, I guess you would say, started making money. So
Oh yeah.
when did you start saying, like, I don't know if, like, what to do now? I'm like, got this whole thing going on. I got this dangerous job that I'm doing. Like, what
Yes.
started to happen in your life that you started to say that maybe this side hustle is more of my main hustle?
Yeah. It was probably about 3 years in that the side hustle became like a full-time business, making at least as much as I was making, if not more. I'm now having I out of necessity, I had to hire a business coach just to keep my head on straight. I was burning the candle at both ends, literal full-time business here, putting just nonstop. And I think you mentioned this in your book, how you're on the job, but at every little opportunity you could, maybe in between calls, you are on the phone with the client. You are
Yep.
booking the next sales call. I'm helping whomever with whatever. I'm spread way too thin, and it actually is everything starting to suffer. Either my business is going to suffer or my performance at my, real job as a police lieutenant over a pretty high speed unit at the time. We can get into that, but I was in a very privileged position, if you will, at work. I'm a lieutenant over one of our top units, high speed unit, where we're doing gun deals, kilo deals, dealing with the worst of the worst, card chases, all kinds of stuff. And so I really needed that. When I'm at work, I really need my focus on my guys. And towards those last couple months, one of the pivotal things that came up was, man, someone might get hurt. My guys are calling me saying, hey, LT, that kilo deal we have coming up? I just wanted to let you know that's going to start in about 30 minutes for the briefing. Will you be there? And I need to be there, and I should be there as a lieutenant and an operational commander. Man, you're in charge, bro. I'm going to need you to handle that for me because I have X, Y, and Z business call on the side. And whether that's right or wrong, it's right in some ways and wrongs in others. And I realized that I'm like, this is not right. Something needs to change.
Mhm.
And it was around that time that I'm having conversations with a very close friend of mine who also happens to be my direct supervisor. And he knows full well exactly what's going on. He's kind of an entrepreneur himself. He has his own side hustle that does very well. And so he feels my pain. He's like, man, I want to support you, but obviously, as long as you can keep them in balance. And I'm like, we're not in balance anymore. I'm letting you know, like, I need to either leave this position and just go back to patrol, which is a lot easier, or man, I'm actually contemplating leaving work. And you know how it is. You went through it. When you grow up around police officers who have that, that super steady income with that guaranteed retirement, who walks away from that? Nobody. And my entire family, who's now at this point retired and living off of that and very happy, saying, Garrett, what are you talking about? You're 3 years away from a guaranteed retirement. You cannot walk away from that. But then I have friends like Roberto, which were clients that became friends. And since we're now charging a lot of money for our board and train programs, I'm now surrounding myself with people who are, millionaires and very
Our very wealthy friend, Roberto.
wealthy. Yes,
Yes,
exactly. And
yes,
successful and
yes.
driven, and guys like Roberto, but especially Roberto, I'm bouncing. He's like, whether he likes it or not, hey, you're my mentor,
Yep.
and he was happy to do it. And I'm running these ideas by him, and he's like, Garrett, I'm not going to make the decision for you, but I'll let you know what I would do. And it's easy for him to say, you're wasting your time. Like, what are you doing? You look how successful your business is. And then I hired a business coach. And then I literally hired a psychologist because I liked a lot of stress, but
Yeah.
all good stress. I'm like, I just need you to help me navigate this biggest life decision the biggest decision of my life, super stressful. And so long story short, I'm skipping, but I did what I'm happy I did it. I took a leave of absence. I was able to take FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, because my wife legitimately was having an issue with nothing that serious, to be honest with you. It didn't require FMLA, but I took advantage of it. I said, I need to take 3 months off, no pay. What does it look like when I don't get paid for 3 months? What does it look like when I don't have to go to work or be a slave to my phone and wake up at 4:30 in the morning for the next operation where we're going after a murder suspect, and I can just put that to the side and focus on my business? And I did that for 3 months. And not everyone gets that opportunity to do that. But if you can take a leave of absence, even for a month or two, even if it's without pay, the job's not going anywhere. It'll be there. That was very much a turning point for me. And you would think after 3 months, I made my decision. I didn't. I was stuck on the fence so bad, daily having conversations with my father, who of course was in the camp, don't leave, having conversations with Roberto and my business coach saying, well, you're a fool. Well, you need to leave now, go for it. And really just torn right in the middle. The pivotal moment for me, and I think this is important to bring up, what finally changed it for me, after countless meetings with my wife and dinner conversations, were all like, someone said it to me the other day, I was agonizing over the decision. It was true agony, like, God, what am I going to do? And anyways, what ended up kind of being the straw that broke the camel's back was my 3 months were up and I had to go back to work. It just so happens that my very first day back to work happened to be one of those, got to get up at 3:30 in the morning for a 4:30 briefing, way far away from home, for a pretty serious armed robbery suspect that was robbing people at gunpoint for their Rolexes with an AR-15, assault rifle. And he's a bad dude with a bad criminal history, and show up for that briefing. Well, I have been, by the way, 3 years and 3 months into this. I am definitely changing who I am, meaning I'm now more of an entrepreneur than I am a police officer. I'm gonna always be a police officer at heart, right? And I started seeing this even before I left police work, where I'm like, I'm hustling, I'm bustling, I'm grinding. These guys are taking 2-hour lunches, smoking and joking because they're on the city's clock. And I'm like, I gotta go. I got things to handle. I gotta move. And I've always been like that, by the way. Just I can't sit in one place too long. So here I am at this briefing, 4:30 in the morning, and I'm like, God, man, I got a business call and I got this, and I wish I was at my office. If I'm going to get up at 4:30 in the morning, I might as well be answering emails and taking dogs out and training them. And here we are, just sitting around. I'm like, man, if you got a 4:30 a.m. briefing, let's start at 4:30. But no, nobody wants to start on time. It's government work. That briefing doesn't start till 5:30. It's not our operation, by the way. It's some other agency's operation. We are just there to support them. So there's 30 plus of us hanging around, smoking and joking, chilling out in the parking lot. And I'm sitting there like ants in my pants, like, can we just get this over with? We start the operation, the briefing, and I'm trying to fast track it. But very quickly, I realized this is not our operation. We're not in charge, but who put this together? This is some poor half-ass planning. And we are going after a guy that just had an AR-15 in someone's face less than 48 hours ago. I think there were shots fired. Very high stakes situation. And we're going to be serving a search warrant on his home. And I'm looking around going, where is SWAT? Where are the guys that get paid to do this, that practice this every day? Not to mention that all 30 guys there and women, we're all hardcore cops, but we are not SWAT officers. And now my sergeant who is with me, who is a SWAT officer and is a super squared away tactical guy, I'm speaking to him on the side going, are you seeing what I'm seeing? He goes, this is, I'm not going to use the expletive, but this is bad news. This is not good, but it's not our operation and we can't change it. And we're here to support them, even though it's a flawed operation. So here we are, we're going to kick down the door of a guy that could very well open up on us. And this is some poorly planned thing. And we're driving there and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm, as I should as a commander, even though it's not my job, I already see what's going to happen. This is going to fall apart very quickly. And then it's going to fall on me anyways to recover this mess that this other agency has created. Because I plan for the worst, hope for the best, plan for the worst. These guys are doing the complete opposite. We'll get it figured out. We'll just kick down the door and see what happens. We show up and the whole time I'm thinking, it can't even get any worse. Yeah, it can get worse. The location that we're going to is like a 20-minute drive down. You'll never find it. Even if we got on the radio and screamed for help, 20 minutes before anybody gets there. So what you're looking at is the only thing that's like, we're our own, this is it. And you better hope it goes right. So they go up the stairs. It's a nightmare. Not only do they have to breach the door, it's on a 3rd floor. It's just, you couldn't have asked for something worse. They do knock, 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 police search warrant. And I'm telling you, I'm hiding behind a tree, not because I'm scared. I mean, I am scared, as we all are, like, but it's the bravery of, pushing through, even though you are in fear, but I'm not going to just stand out in the open and get shot. So I'm hiding behind the biggest tree I could find, thinking, well, when these guys get shot at through the front door, at least I won't have a bullet hole in me. And I know exactly where we are and what rescue to ask for and how they're going to get here. And I already have my plan in motion. I'm thinking, this is just, it was just horrible. I'm like, I could be at home training dogs. What am I doing hiding behind a tree, anticipating the worst? And long story short, they end up getting the guy. No issue, no shots fired. I'm like, thank God.
Yeah.
But I'm not happy. I'm not like, woo, we got the guy. I'm like, this sucks. This is horrible. I've taken 3, but this was my day-to-day life up until that point. For 18 and a half years, that's all I did day in and day out, riding on adrenaline, one bad guy to the next, one crazy operation, car chase, shooting, bailout to the next. It's normal. It's just when I took 3 months off and came back, I came in with some fresh eyes going, we don't get paid enough for this. None of us do. No police officer out there gets paid enough for what we do or have to deal with. And I'm like, I kept thinking to myself too, while I'm hiding behind that tree. I shouldn't say hiding, but taking cover. We're
Yes.
hiding. I don't want to get hit.
Cover. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going, this might get really bad. And if those guys get lit up, which I think they might, it's going to be on me, my sergeant, and the one other officer who are really squared away. And we're going to go up there and have to be the savers of the saviors, right? Like, we're going to have to save them. And I was ready for that. I'm like, and we're going to have to put that guy down and we're going to have to get into a gun battle with him. And I just kept thinking, because at this point, I'm telling you now, I've already made the decision. I'm done. I'm going to take Roberto's advice. I'm going to take John's advice. I need to go. I need to give the business the love and attention that it deserves, because it's the right thing. And I basically, after 18 and a half years, I'm over it. I'm over the police work. It's not in my heart anymore. It's just not. My mind's not there. And as I'm hiding behind that tree, kind of like my life's flashing before my eyes, if you will, it's not that dramatic, but I just kept thinking, like, if this is my last day at work, which I'm telling you it is, I'm convincing myself, I'm having this internal argument. Aren't there stories of those officers on their last day, 1 week from retirement, and they get killed? I'm like, here I am. I'm going to get shot when this guy opens up on me from the 3rd floor with an AR-15. Super successful business. Garrett had everything in front of him, 2 young kids. And on his very last day at work, the day before he decides to quit, he gets shot. And I'm like, if I can make it through this, God, I'm leaving today. And we make it through, and I go up to make sure everybody's good before we leave. Everybody's good. Everybody's safe. You got the guys in cuffs. Great job. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I told my sergeant, who I love dearly, I'm out of here, man. I know we had all these plans for today. I'm just letting you know, I'm not coming back to work. I'm sorry to tell you, we'll have a more formal meeting in a minute, but I'm out of here. I get in the car. It's now 6:30 in the morning. That major I told you about, my direct supervisor, he got the very next text, which read something to this effect. Good morning, sir. As promised, the operation went off smoothly. Nobody's hurt. Subject in custody. That's the good news. The bad news, I'm not coming back to work. He knew, he read between the lines. I said, call me later when it's, not 6:30 in the morning, and we'll discuss. And we went to lunch later that day, and we had the same conversation we're having now. And we went ahead and started that process of getting that pink slip signed and signing out. And like I said, that's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I haven't looked back since. It's been, the
Wow.
business is just continues to improve month over month, and with no end in sight. And I couldn't be happier.
Well, you and I could probably talk forever. We definitely went over time, but I thought it was worth it to go over time with your story because there's so many similarities between yours and mine. Like my wife, I had to leave for family leave, no pay. I had a couple of those moments like you where I was like, I'm going to get killed or someone else is going to get killed with my
Yeah.
mindset now. And I'm sure there's so many other great stories that you have, but I guess you've been going for how long now?
So
Since you
October officially,
so it's
uh,
been like 4 or 5 months now?
about 6 months, I
6
think. Yeah.
months?
Yeah.
Um, you regret it?
Not at all. I was just having a conversation with my wife a couple weeks ago. I'm like, man, if I could have left sooner, I couldn't have. It would never have worked. But no regrets. All that him and hawing and agonizing over it. I'm like, man, and you need to do that work. You have to go through that process, I think, to make sure you're making the right decision. And I went through that process, and yeah, I don't regret it at all.
So
Not
it
at all.
worked out the way it should have worked out.
Yeah, better than I could have hoped for. Yes.
So, what advice would you leave someone's like you and I, right? They're sitting there, you and I really had 3 years both, which is ironic, right? We both had
Yeah.
3 years. We're sitting there for that. I guess they call it the golden ticket.
Yes.
Um, what advice would you give them? They're sitting there having the same thoughts you did. What advice? What should they do? How should they go through the process to figure out stay, go, or what's your advice to them?
Right. Well, it's not easy no matter how you do it. It's always going to be a bit of a grind, if you will. You have to definitely have someone in your corner, if not two or three people in your corner, that are where you think you would like to be, right? You can't just ask, if you're a dental hygienist, you can't ask the dental hygienist around you about, your visions to become a millionaire or be successful. So you have to have that kind of sounding board, someone that you can speak to that's going to give you real sound advice and kind of give you the hope and inspiration and guidance. But that's not going to be the answer, because I had Roberto in my corner. I had a business coach in my corner. I even got on a call with John Claddy, who wrote the book himself. I read his book. And even after speaking to you, none of that is ever going to, they're not going to make the decision for you. They can't do that. But you have to really, you know, turn off all the outside noise. And that might mean disregarding the advice from your loving parents who mean the best for you. But understand, like, if your parents did that 40 years on the job, 9 to 5, they might not be the best ones to tell you about the possibilities that are, because let me tell you, my father, I love him dearly. His advice was, Garrett, you got to stick it out. My
Yep.
stepmother, stick it out. Everybody's telling me stick it out. Any police officer I asked, not a single one of them ever, they would laugh at me. Are you crazy? You're not leaving. Don't leave. You're crazy.
Same
Even
here.
to, yeah, you
Same here.
know it. And
Yeah.
so by all means, take their advice, but you're the one that's going to have to make the decision. And what helped me make the decision was definitely taking that small little time off to think clearly, see what it's like, do a little test run. And it also just comes down to probably two things. If I had to surmise it, there's obviously the practical aspect, the dollar and cents part. You got to write down and you got to really look at the finances and see if it's doable.
Mhm.
Number one. Number two, you got to ask yourself, like, explore worst case scenario. I think that was very helpful for me. My business coach helped me do that. Roberto helped me do that. Garrett, let's think about this. If you quit your police job and you couldn't go back, if your business absolutely tanked tomorrow, could you function? What would you do? You have all these dreams of doing all this big stuff, but if it all fell apart and you had to move to another city and start over from scratch, could you do it? And I'm like, yeah, that was the easy answer when you made it very simple. And for me, the math was simply, could I simply train 1 or 2 dogs a month and live a very happy life, a very comfortable life, similar to what I was doing already as a police lieutenant? Could I bring in about, for me, it was like 10 grand a month training 2 dogs. I could do that. I've built my business to that point. And when I looked at it that way, like no matter what happens with the business, I could always train a dog or two a month and easily get by. That's worst case scenario. And if you can live with worst case scenario, then you
Yeah.
got nothing to lose, you know? And so that
Yeah.
was huge for me. And then I think the final determining factor, really the biggest one weighing on me was like, because it was only 3 more years I had to put in, but it was 3 very pivotal years of my children's life at the time, 4 and 6 or 3 and 5. What's their life going to be like if I'm not there for the next 3.5 years? Like, how detrimental will that be to their development and them growing up that daddy is never, ever, ever home? Or even when daddy's home, he's so freaking stressed, you don't even want to be around him. And that's not healthy. And so I said, what's best for my children? And, the answer was very clear: work 120 hours a week and never be home and be stressed to the max, or work from home, which that was the luxury I had with this job, which is why I decided to do the dog training to begin with, because I could be, if I was going to work the extra hours, at least be home with my family. So I kind of train dogs and hang with my kids at the same time. And it was kind of a no-brainer at that point. And then ultimately, again, the straw that broke the camel's back is then when I returned back, it so much had changed in just those 3 months. I was not the same person anymore. And I just had to do it. So I don't know what the advice is there, but
Oh, I think
you
there's a
have to
lot
make
of
that.
advice. I would say that if the main thing I got from it was, number one, know that you can do it financially. Make
Yes,
sure you're in the right mindset and take all the advice you get, good and bad, and decide what's best for you. And then last but not least, take a look at your family and see what's important to you, right? And I think really a lot of similarity. Like I said, eerily, a lot of similarities between you and I. And we could probably keep talking forever, and we will, because we're going to catch up and get together. And I want to
perfect.
definitely hear more. But I appreciate you for being here. I'm proud of you that you made the decision, that things are
Thank you.
going great for you and your family. And thanks for being here today, man.
No, and thank you again for your advice. Thank you for your book. It's if anyone's, you got to read the book if you're in a situation like you were and like I am. It can only help. It can only help. And again, it's not going to make the decision for you, but it's just one step closer for you helping determine what's right for you. So thank you very much for everything.
Awesome. Well, Garrett, you heard it right there from him, folks. You got to buy my book, right? I mean, that's the first thing. And number
Yes,
two, you got to share this podcast story with all your friends and family, because I think this one definitely a lot of people need to hear this story, because it's the story, right? A lot of these stories are very similar to mine and yours, and like I said, I hope people kind of share this, because I think this resonates with me and so many other stories that I've talked to over the years. So share it, listen to it, and join our next time we're here together. Appreciate you guys. Have a good day.